So today I'm going to share with you a personal story about that moment in time when you first realize what it really means to be a parent, and how that tiny sliver of an instant in the relentless unfolding of time forever changes your worldview. Now, the story I'm going to share with you is a personal story about my family, but we're all part of a large family called humanity. So in essence, what I want to do today is share a story that will prepare all our children for a world we can barely imagine. Now, I've been an educator for over 15 years. Why? Because for me, there's nothing more fulfilling than that magical moment when another human being is viscerally taken by the power of an idea. We've all seen it. I call it the eureka moment, and I'm an addict for that. That's why I love being in the classroom. It's not surprising that I became an educator. I come from a long line of educators. Right there, that's my grandfather. He was the headmaster of the local tech at my hometown in Ireland, called Youghal. Not Y'all like here, but Y-O-U-G-H-A-L. Everybody in town knew and loved my grandfather. He was a pillar of the community, and long after he retired from the classroom, people would seek out his counsel and wisdom over a couple of pints at the local pub. He never stopped being an educator. One day, my grandfather stepped up on the fairway, the second longest fairway of the golf course in Youghal, teed up the ball, and drove it further than he'd ever driven it before. And in the same instant, he passed away. A friend of his who was there at the time related to me this way later. "Sure, he was dead before he hit the ground, boy." Now, every cloud has a silver lining, so I take great solace in the fact that my grandfather passed away doing something he loved, surrounded by people who loved him. Granddad had this amazing workshop in the back of his house, and to me it was like a treasure trove. We spent countless hours in there taking apart radios or playing with his favorite thing was to refurbish grandfather clocks. And the time I spent with him is where I really became interested in technology. But I do remember about 20 years later, after doing all that tinkering with my grandfather, the moment in time when my technology odyssey really began. I was in a plane flying into New York City, approaching LaGuardia. Looked out at the window at one of the greatest marvels of human technological achievement ever, New York City. And yet, I was crying uncontrollably. I'm an Irish guy, you're not supposed to do that. I'm a guy, you're not supposed to do that. But I was crying uncontrollably. I was completely distraught. Why? Because I just read Bill Joy's article, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us. And I realized in that instant that I had for 15 years been a techno-optimist and never paused to ponder what technology could mean for humanity in a negative sense. So I started on my journey, and the first thing I did was I went back to my grandfather's technology odyssey. I started to think about the arc of his lifetime and the amount of technology he had to absorb. He saw the invention of the telephone, the television, the internal combustion engine, manned flight, Sputnik, highway systems, transatlantic radio. A man landed on the moon. And he saw the beginning of what we're all going through right now with the computer revolution. As I stopped to think about it, it's amazing the man did not spontaneously combust walking down the street rather than passing away on the golf course. He had to absorb so much change. The rate of change in his life was amazing. These are my kids. Aiden's 8, Liam's 5. I've got one question as a researcher and as a father. What will the arc of their lifetime look like? What will their technology odyssey be? Will they experience more or less change? Will they be more or less fulfilled? Will they be revered long after they pass away? The responsibility of a parent in this day and age is daunting. As I started to dig into technology, one of the things that became really interesting to me was the role that time plays in dealing with the rate of change. When we say rate of change, time is baked into the equation. It's right there in the denominator. And with each successive derivative of time, the rate of change itself also changes. Now, it's okay for us to understand velocity and acceleration. We can feel that in a car, we can feel that on a plane. But when we get into the third derivative rate of change, which scientists appropriately call jerk, then we lose the ability to comprehend it viscerally. And that's a problem. So I submit to you today that the world in the 21st century, the time signature of the planet, is no longer synchronized with speed and acceleration. It's syncopating with jerk. And what that means is technology's jerking humanity around. And so, because we're not able to process this rate of change, we don't have the equipment, we are not aware of the fact that the Earth is essentially developed a digital nervous system. It's created, the world has weaved the web into an electronic exoskeleton that connects people and amplifies ideas at a third derivative rate of change, and we can't process it. So what's happening is we are entering into a world that I call a digital divide of a different kind. I'm not talking about the haves and have-nots in terms of access here. I'm talking about the no and no-nots in terms of survival. Along the bottom, humanity has essentially remained constant in its ability to process and store information, while technology is about to go through the jerk wormhole. And as a parent, or as a human being, we have to worry about how do we prepare our kids for a future where technology is proliferating, information is exploding, time's compressing, and change is accelerating. Where do we even begin? What do we do? I'm done. No. So, I started to think about it a little bit. It was supposed to be a 12-minute talk. I'm like, maybe I'll stop there. So I started to think about what are the possible futures for all of humanity. One is enslaved. The technology attenuates the fulfillment of human potential. It limits our sense of identity, and we morph ourselves and maybe even our dreams to the current form of technology. In this world, our children surf in the shallows of the internet, eroding their introspective capabilities and always going for the always-on answer box inside the web when facing a question. At the highest level, we essentially become IT laborers working a life of indentured servitude for server farm owners. I don't like that one. In the empowered scenario, technology essentially amplifies and enables the fulfillment of human potential. Technology acts as a flywheel and syncopates to allow our children to realize their wildest and boldest dreams. And at the highest level, the trillion hours of cognitive surplus that exists around the world today in the exoskeleton is connected and amplified in a way that benefits all of humanity. That's cool. I could deal with that one. In the enmeshed scenario, the fulfillment of human potential moves into the post-human realm. And by the post-human realm, what I mean is more and more today, we are bringing into our bodies technological affordances to allow us to do better. Cochlear implants, knee replacement, hip replacements, heart valves, right? Move a little bit further out, a smart nano pill to get us better at doing calculus. Moving a little further out, and I'm talking maybe only 20 years, the ability to actually transpose the neural correlates of our emotions into a virtual avatar so we can live in perpetuity in a digital domain. As man meshes with machine, there's an incredibly new set of possibilities, but the price of entry is giving up your unique human identity. Now, the extinguished scenario is the one nobody wants to talk about, but precisely because we cannot process the third derivative rate of change, what can happen is the electronic exoskeleton can essentially connect and amplify the unanticipated consequences of our actions, leading to the eradication of humanity. Now, if that happens, all bets are off. Can't help you. But I'm betting on humanity. So what I've done is I've come up with 7 touchstones that I think are really important to prepare our children for the future. The first thing is you got to love your children unconditionally. If you love your children without condition, it's the most liberating and confidence-building thing you can do. And without self-confidence, our children won't have the courage of their convictions to follow their truth to personal fulfillment. The second is cultivate their sense of curiosity. Curiosity is the lifeblood of learning. It's the source, it's the motivation. Without learning, there is no change. Without the ability to change, the likelihood of survival in a world that's changing as fast as ours, game over. They have to have a sense of curiosity. Nurture their sense of identity. If you don't know who you are or what you stand for, the likelihood of you ending up somewhere other than where you want to be is increased. Without a strong sense of identity, the likelihood of our children being enslaved by technology or enmeshed with it increases. Fourth, respect their skepticism. In a world that's awash with information, a healthy dose of skepticism is really important. Even more important, respecting others' opinions, even if they're not your own, is a foundation of a core and just society. Without a healthy dose of skepticism, our children won't have the wherewithal to say no. Okay? Next one, encourage their introspection. As the world out here tends towards unpredictability, the world in here needs to maintain its sanity. Without a strong set of ongoing self-reflection, the likelihood of losing the bearings of our internal compass and getting lost in the sea of digital delusion increases. Next, indulge their playfulness. Play is not the opposite of work. Play is a crucible for creativity and a portal to possibility. Play is the thing that allows kids to figure out how to work with each other and how to work the network to get things done. It's the thing that engenders within them a questing disposition. And if you take play out of the equation, the world sucks. Who wants to have a kid living in a world that sucks? Last, nurture their selflessness. At the end of the day, having respect for humanity is the core to a civil society. Without a strong intrinsic motivation to help your neighbor, the likelihood of living a fulfilled life tends towards zero. So there you have it. The 7 touchstones that I believe are really important in order to foster humanity. I don't think it's a bad list. Why? Because if I went back in time and I showed it to my grandfather, he'd say, well, that's not a bad list, and I'd do that if I were you. And so we come to the kind of timelessness of these principles that I went through in terms of my grandfather being able to recognize it. So, sorry. I apologize for dragging you through my own odyssey to come up with those 7 things. I probably should have kept it all to myself. But it's out now. So I do hope that my talk motivates you to do what you already know you should be doing as a parent. And for all of us who are here today, let's promise ourselves and promise each other to do one thing, to touch one of these touchstones with a kid you know, to help them to succeed in a world we can barely imagine, let alone predict. Gaurav Milya Magat.